Today, we have a remarkable guest whose journey is not just inspiring, but truly transformative. Her story is a testament of the incredible power of self-awareness in breaking free from life's challenges and achieving unimaginable success. But before we dive into the heart of today's topic, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt stuck in life, weighed down by circumstances, and desperately searching for a way out? If so, you're in the right place, because today we're going to explore how self-awareness can be the key to getting unstuck, and we have the perfect guest to guide us on this enlightening journey. Our guest today, Jamie Milam, is someone I deeply admire. Her life's journey has been a roller coaster of resilience and determination. Just imagine being on your own at the age of 15 and facing the daunting challenge of overcoming drug addiction while discovering that you're about to become a mother at just 19 years old. That is a crucible of pressure that would break many, but not Jamie. She embodied a relentless figure-it-out mentality, and it not only helped her rebuild her life from the contents of a single Rubbermaid tote, but also led her to build not one, not two, but 3 successful businesses that she runs today. Her story is a true testament to the extraordinary potential within all of us when we tap into our inner strength. What truly sets Jamie apart, though, is her realization that while strategic systems were instrumental in her financial success, it was the practice of deep self-awareness that allowed her to break free from the weight of pressure and truly value herself. Through self-awareness, she found the inner peace that allowed her to navigate life's challenges with grace and align her strategies with her authentic self. I can't help but reflect on how similar our journeys have been, and I'm genuinely honored to have her on the show today. I tear up even talking about her because it was 3 seconds in and she said, "Oh my gosh, we're going to be best friends." And I truly hope that is continued on. But her journey mirrors the struggles and triumphs that many of us face. And I believe that her insights on self-awareness will resonate deeply with you as a listener. So, dear friends, get ready for this eye-opening conversation with Jamie as we delve into the incredible power of self-awareness and how it can be the key to breaking free from life's shackles. It's time to think outside the box and really discover the untapped potential within ourselves. Stay tuned. You are listening to That Big CEO Energy, where we talk all things business, life, marriage, and push you to a new edge of discovering what that big CEO energy means for you. Listen, I understand that we have barriers that we carry from when we were once employees, and those have impacted us as we continue to build our businesses. I'm here to walk alongside you and give you encouragement through interviews with friends and other women in business who have broken down those barriers and paved their own way. Tune in with me as we uncover some of the unconscious things that we do that keep us from building that big CEO energy we've always dreamed about. Let's dive in. Jamie, thank you so much for coming today. And we've had a little bit of conversation beforehand, so I'm just going to let everybody know that if we're already in tears 2 minutes in, that is why. But thank you so much for your willingness to come on and share your hearts and, your strategies that you have. And so I want to first kind of layer in where you come from, sort of what your story is. I know it's pretty lengthy, and I will include your website in the show notes. So for those of you who want to go deeper than the cliff notes you're going to give us today, then they can do that. But tell us who you are and where you come from and how you ended up here.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me, Kaylee. I'm so excited to be here. And I just love how you're diving into these things with people. Success stories, there's always a backstory. And so, so as you mentioned, I've been on my own since the age of 15, which, with no parental guidance, you can imagine that a teenager finds themselves in environments that are not conducive for healthy lifestyles. And so I actually had became a meth addict. I was living in Oklahoma. And as a part of that, I found myself in situation after situation that just was a little scary. I have a 17-year-old now, and I look at him and I just think to myself, oh my God, if he was in these situations, I don't know what I would do. So when I found out at the age of 19 that I was pregnant, going to become a mom, I knew somewhere deep inside of me, I knew that day I need to turn my life around because this child doesn't deserve that. And so I did. I had gone to the Goodwill. I had ran away from home. I was the victim of sexual violence and I had ran away from home. I was scared for my life. And I was living in a hotel room with my son's biological father in Myrtle Beach temporarily. And so I had left my house. I'd left all my belongings from Oklahoma and had nothing but like a small duffel bag. So I, go to Goodwill and I get this Rubbermaid storage tote and pick up, a little bit of baby clothes and a baby blanket, and eventually found my way back to Oklahoma so that I could start to see a doctor, and just made this internal decision to have to do something different. So that journey, I get told all the time, like I just graze over this aspect of things, because I think what happens is you get into this mentality of survival mode. And so many people were like, how did you do it? And it's like, well, I had no choice. It was sink or swim. It was me or nobody. Nobody else is going to do this for us. Right. And the journey didn't look pretty. It wasn't like an overnight thing. I had to go through a Rolodex of people to see who I could stay with. And my Rolodex included drug addicts. So, that you're not going to be going back into a, stable environment. It takes a lot of self-control and, creating some boundaries, which I'm using words that I had no relationship with at that time. It was just a matter of, hey, I need somewhere to stay. And can y'all just give me the respect of having my own room and not be waving stuff in front of me, right? Every step of the way, there was some gratitude in moving from one crappy living situation to a little bit less crappy of a living situation to then a little bit less again. I lived in trailers that didn't have working air conditioning. One didn't have a working kitchen. A boyfriend had fallen through the floor in front of the toilet. We didn't have hot water in December. So I'm 7 months pregnant, taking cold showers. I asked my family not to give me any Christmas gifts, but to give me some money so that I could get a deposit on a better place. And the place was better because it did have a piece of plywood covering the floor, the hole in the floor, only had one broken window, but the baby's room was already painted blue. And I just felt immensely grateful that I could bring him home somewhere that had working air conditioning and heating and water, and the room was already blue. It felt meant to be,
Yeah.
So every step of the way, I was just grateful. Eventually got myself back into college. At this point, I am, I'm in abusive relationship with an abusive relationship, one after another. But I go back to college. I eventually get into a decent job at a pharmacy. I end up holding 2 jobs. Then I am single mom mode and juggling a full-time college schedule, 2 jobs, and a toddler. And that's where I think purposeful planning and some systems started to come into play. Because when you're juggling all of those things and you're like, okay, how many online classes can I take? Can I get somebody to keep him one night a week so I can take a night class? Can I take a class during my lunch hour between jobs? It took a lot of managing all of these different moving parts. And nobody was there to really teach me how to do that. But it was a matter of, well, this is the only way I'm going to be able to make it happen is if I put it all in this space together. So fast forward, I start to become a part of healthier communities, being in college, working in a professional space, in the medical industry, and eventually had hooked up with a high school crush. And we ended up getting married in 2014. And we knew that we wanted to leave Oklahoma. I knew that. which I had a very small support group there, but they were tight. They'd been there my entire son's life. So it was hard to leave them. But we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina in early 2015. And I love it. I love it here. I love that it helped me feel like I could break out of a mold that I was probably projecting that everybody else had pegged me for, but it was still my perspective. I needed to get out of a space where people didn't know the story, that I didn't have to tell the story, that I didn't have to worry if they knew the story, that I could redefine who I was and who I wanted to be. And with that comes a lot of like excitement and new opening doors. Yeah. And, I changed jobs so many times, but I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in medical sales and eventually found that space. And I'd been in sales for several years already. And eventually I was in a corporate space that just did not have really good culture. It started to really hurt. But at the same time with sales, any type of sales, the more effort you put in, the more reward you can have. And that becomes, pretty instantaneous reward and motivation. And eventually I decided to get out of that and get into real estate and start to build a business in real estate. And so you really get into hustle mentality. And I would almost say that hustle mentality, because you could see the reward, becomes its own new addiction. And with that, of course, everything I was doing so that my son could have a better life, so that he didn't have to live in trailer parks, so that I could help him with college and he wouldn't have the debt that I had, that he could have more opportunities handed to him, that he could earn, or that he had, me to help him and guide him. That I didn't have to ever worry about being in a relationship due to financial, need, and instead one that was because it was a partnership. All of those things were a driving factor. But the hustle mentality and the go, go, go really didn't allow me to take time to actually really be present in my relationships. So while everything looked great and successful on the outside, on the inside, everything was imploding. My marriage was falling apart. We started marriage therapy, and it eventually led to a place where I started individual therapy. That day, I said to my individual therapist, I said, I really just want to feel like I can trust my gut. I can't even hear my gut. I don't even know if I have an intuition anymore. And I'm second guessing every decision I'm making. I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I don't know what to do about my marriage. I don't know what the future looks like anymore. And man, wow, to think that was like 4.5 years ago at this point, it's incredible because now, I would put my gut up against almost anybody, anything. I trust my gut so much because I've done so much work now to pay attention to what my body is giving me cues for. She used to say, well, what if we weren't trying to figure out your marriage? What if we were trying to figure out what this meant about you, what this was saying about you and what you truly desire? And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But, do I stay or do I go?
Yeah.
And eventually it did lead to a decision to separate and eventually divorce. And after that divorce, I decided to take a 5-day trip to Italy. Spur of the moment, I was supposed to go to Amsterdam, and I have been told my entire adult life really that I have to have control over everything. I'm such a planner and, you don't do anything spontaneous. And so I was like, well, screw that. I'm going to Amsterdam. Well, I was flying out on a Wednesday, and on Saturday, I started to book my tickets for the museums. All I had was my flight and my hotel, which to me, I was like, yeah, see, I could do this spontaneous stuff. And I start to book it, and I realized, well, shoot, Amsterdam went back into full lockdown mode and they're having riots there. Yeah, I don't think that I should go there by myself, this week. So I had to pivot everything, and I went to Italy. And because I wasn't married to Amsterdam, I was married to learning what I could learn about myself. And I show up to Milan and my luggage does not show up with me. And so started off right there. The universe is like, okay, we hear you. Let's see what you can learn about yourself, right? Man, what a powerful trip that was. I realized that this whole time I've been saying I want to give my son experiences and I want to have experiences. That's what I'm working for. But I hadn't been making the time for it. And so I really had to take a look to say to myself, like, am I creating my business in a way that is supporting this new transition, this new perspective, and really these goals that I've been wanting all along? But am I doing it in a way that's conducive for also being really present in my current space, my relationships, and really being present with my son? The answer was no. And so I came back a few months later, I restructured my business. I had just bought my first investment property, and I had decided, you know what, I'm going to start creating more ways to do things. I'm a realtor still, it's still my core business, but I've also incorporated other ways that will allow me as I work through this new transition, because it's natural. Your goals start to look different when your season changes. I don't have that family unit anymore. My 5-10 year goals with me and my husband, they're not the same things. It looks a little different, and that's okay for us to pivot our strategy because our goals look different now. So now it's about being so aware of recognizing what I need in the moment and choosing strategies. And even if that's an individual action, the action that I need to take right now, what do I need to do right now to bring me peace with whatever pressure it is that I'm feeling, to bring me peace with, removing the shame, that might pop up because, you know how successful you can be when you hustle really hard, and to choose to not be doing that. And that's the thing, it's a choice, right? Being acutely aware that you are making that choice means that you have awareness around the decisions that you're making. And that's really, it's a whole new place to be. And it's allowed me to apply this awareness to communication. And I mean like communication with everybody, clients, my son, my friends, right? Like everybody, but also just strategies, taking those systems that I already had in place and now putting them to work for me to apply more leverage and more automation and expectation setting, and not having the local employees that I had, because that was draining my energy, but instead moving to a lot more virtual assistants that are segmented in their spaces, that I could then eventually, if I wanted to travel for 6 weeks at a time somewhere, I could. Am I setting myself up to be a little bit more open to what the future might look like for me as my seasons continue to change?
Yeah.
That was a very long journey space, but it encompasses just a few different transformations. And I think that's important, especially for women, because, we have a lot on our plate, and, our seasons change as we grow and as our kids grow, especially as our businesses grow. We don't stay stagnant. Our goals can shift and pivot, right? Our strategies can pivot. And I think that that's important for us as women to acknowledge and to accept.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to back up a little bit on something that you said when you were talking about your fight or flight mode, that you and I have a similar story, which a lot of people know my journey. I mean, now, especially since I did a podcast episode on Sunday, kind of putting it out in the world. When do you feel like that fight or flight response dissolved? Was it a moment, or was it a period of time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely wouldn't say that it was a moment. And if it was a moment, it's going to be, you know what? I'm going to take that entirely back. It was a moment. And here's what happens is with trauma, your brain can suppress things, right? And it was a moment. In fact, now that I'm saying it, my feet can feel the moment because I know exactly where I was standing. I know the exact conversation that I was having, and it was in my marriage. And it was the moment that, and I said, I don't know when, and I don't know how, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know that coming up in my future, I'm going to be owning my story. And when I do, I need to know that I have a partner that fully understands and embraces it and is on the same page with me. And I don't feel like that right now. And so I can't sit down. I physically could not move. I couldn't sit down. It was no longer a fight or flight from pressures and proving myself. It was, I'm fighting for myself in this moment. I'm ready to stand up for this thing, to embrace that there is a part of my story that I have been so ashamed to share, so scared about judgment. The word vulnerable made me want to throw up in my mouth.
Yep.
Like not even being vulnerable, just the word vulnerable wanted me to just vomit, right? I was not willing to do it. I was so scared that it would mean that I couldn't be a professional, that people wouldn't want to work with me, that people would think that you're always that person, right? And instead of allowing it to define who I am, but instead embrace that it absolutely shapes who you are. But it was that moment that I decided to fight for myself in a way that is not selfish, but acknowledges that all of that work that I've been doing with my therapist up to that point, of recognizing my body is literally telling me something. And it was, y'all, like my husband had to ask me, like, can you just sit down? Let's talk about that. I physically could not move my feet from the spot that I was in. My body was telling me this right here, this is so out of alignment with your values and what you look for in your future and what you look for in a true partnership. And being able to recognize that for once, my body is screaming at me and telling me, honor you, honor what you need right now, value it so much that you're willing to stand up for it. And that to me, I think was a huge pivotal moment. I mean, it is ultimately the exact conversation that was the pivoting moment to lead to my divorce. And, since then it's been working with my therapist to deepen this, mastery of self-awareness and doing it so much so that, the amount of peace that has been in my world for the last 2 years, like an acceptance and alignment has just been phenomenal.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting when we take a fight or flight, whatever that is for someone, obviously our stories are a little bit aligned in the sense that our fight or flight became a mode of survival. It is just, again, like you were saying, how can I make this situation, whatever I am in right now, 1% better tomorrow, 1% better next week, 1% better next month? And I think when you get in that for so many years and you're a single mom for so many years, it's almost like you feel like this is just who I am now. This is just how I operate. And so I'm comfortable here. I'm living in this. And you're kind of looking around and going, well, what's wrong with it? And not really realizing the detrimental mental load that you are putting on yourself. Because, and we talked a little bit about this before we got on here, we both have teenagers that are walking into their senior year of high school. They're walking into going to leave our home. And when you're a single mom, especially of one child, let alone multiple children, praise those moms, first of all. But when you are so ingrained in this fight or flight response the whole entire time, when you get to this point and you have done all of this work, I totally resonate with the fact that you are like, I don't know how to share my story because it's, number one, it's a little bit painful, right? I think I just now got to the point where like I can tell my story and not cry over it, right? And not cry over the little girl that was raising the baby and growing up herself, right? And working 3 jobs and taking 21 credit hours of school. And that's our life. That's all we knew. And so I think it's interesting that there's this fight or flight that shows up and you choose the fight to stand up for yourself, not for you and your son, right? Because you could have very easily said, I'm going to do this because this is going to create a better environment for me and my son. And when you remove, right? Not that we're removing our kids out of this aspect, but I think there's an aspect of, and this is where I want to transition, is when you are a mom, it is very easy to get hung up on the fact that you are doing things for you and, right? It's me and my kids, me and my son, me and my daughter. And we almost use that as a crutch for not
choosing us,
not moving ourselves forward, not positioning ourselves in a place of growth, because our growth has come out of fight or flight. Our growth has come out of doing things that set our kids up for success, right? When we transition to this place of standing firm and you have this out of the box moment, that's what I'm going to call it, where you are like, you know what? Italy sounds really freaking good right now. And I'm going to travel alone. You kind of have like your eat, pray, love moment, right? When you came back and you started really working with your self-awareness and sort of with getting unstuck in terms of feeling like it's you and your son, and now you're working on yourself, what are those things that you had to be really, really honest with yourself in not just your marriage, but for yourself?
Well, that's the thing is, I think that looking back, it's like, you're projecting this thought process. Because I want to say this. Most of the time, we are not making conscious decisions of fight or flight, right? Or that we are not choosing us. We think that we are. We think that we're choosing us and our son, right? And our kids. Like, we think that that is the thing. So let me make that clear that when you're in that, it is not a conscious thing that you're not separating the two. So, for me, again, I think I was trying to prove something to myself and probably to the world, like to the people that knew me, that I could be something in somebody different than those people. But most importantly, I wanted to make sure that I was doing something that nobody could ever come in and tell my kid what a crappy person I was in that season, that everything that he's ever seen of me is not that, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, I think that shame sat with me for so long because of those decisions, right? Because there's this part of you that says, if I hadn't have been in those places, right, then I wouldn't have been raped. If I hadn't have been on drugs, then I wouldn't have lost my house. I should have. And we forget that sits in our bodies for a really long time. And I think that that's what I wasn't doing, was addressing the shame. I would say I fought regularly for a better life. I fought to grow regularly. What I flighted from was actually addressing the deeper inner child and trauma, the things that led to those things, the willingness to accept that there are parts of us, and this is true for every single person, no matter your stories. There's a great book out there. I think her name is Catherine Taylor. It's the Inner Child Workbook. But she talks about the different ages that you develop different skills. And she breaks it down like newborn to 18 months, right? 18 months to 3 years old, 3 years old to 5 years, so on and so forth. Okay. These different skills that you are learning based on your environments. And these are building neuropaths within you and part of your development. You have no control over it. You have zero control over what was happening in your environment from ages 0 to 6 months, but your body was learning how to trust others. Your body was learning what it felt like to be seen and heard, to be feeling safe and secure and nurtured. And you have no control over that, but it absolutely shapes the way that your perspective is and how you connect with others. Okay. Absolutely. So I genuinely say this all the time. I'm an open book and super vulnerable, that the best money I spend hands down is my therapy every single week.
Amen.
And I'm not like, oh, well, cool, I finally have addressed that, or okay, we made the decision about my marriage. There's a whole nother season that comes in. Now you're learning how to deal with this loss, right? Because that's what it is. And then it's, how do I reshape my business? Because now I'm a single mom back in my house again. And then it's, how do I get back comfortable with potentially dating, right? Yeah. Oh God, how do I not make the same mistakes? There's a whole new season, and it's not some drama every single week. Sometimes it's actually processing the good stuff, sitting in the good stuff. because that's not what we do when we're in fight or flight and survival mode for so long. We're not sitting in that present space. So I feel like coming back from Italy, and I'm going to say this too, I'm a huge proponent that the universe brings us things in the right timing, because coming back from Italy also was in January, and I had to start a new health insurance because my divorce required that I was now off my husband's, right? And that jacked up medications. I had my medication was not covered by my new insurance. I went through medication changes for a few months, and that was not good. I mean, it was rough to do it at the same time. It's almost hard to say, like, which is actually the reason why I restructured everything. Was it because I was not fully myself, because of medication changes, or was it the trip? And I really do like to think that it was both. And so coming back, now it's been, okay, what do I need in the moment? And sometimes that's as simple as, like, with my kid, I'm frustrated and I have to check in, and I have a 5-step process. And I'd love to give you a link for the show notes that people can learn this, process
Please.
for peace and alignment, right? Because you have to be able to pay attention, like, okay, I am feeling so much frustration. Like, and what is that? Sometimes you have to just name it, acknowledge it, validate that, right? Just by acknowledging it, you're validating your feelings. And when you realize that you're allowed to feel 2 different things at the same time, there's power in that, right? It's validating that this emotion is real. Your kid might be, like, really not respecting your boundaries, not setting right expectations, or sometimes when they are doing their teenage things and you have a fear for their safety, they don't know that that's what the fear is. And so sometimes it takes communication. So now it's just really been, and this is the same process that I apply no matter if it's my kid or my business. It's, what am I feeling right now? Like, if it's a frustration, even in my business, it's what's causing this frustration, right? Is it that I have, a VA that I'm constantly having to remind to do this one thing? Okay, is there a way for us to automate this, right? Because I love everything else that she's doing, but there's a bottleneck somewhere. Is there a way for us to automate this in the process? But again, I'm aware of the frustration. So now I'm like, okay, that's a real valid frustration. It might be communication, right? Sometimes it might be that it's the wrong person, but at the same time, it's, okay, let's take ourselves out of this emotion for a second. And that's way easier to do when we've acknowledged it, when we've named it, when we've allowed ourselves to accept that we are allowed to feel that way. And at the same time, we want to be able to move forward. We want to see the success in our business, but we're also allowed to feel frustrated. When we name it, we suddenly, the desire to, like, express it in that emotion really dissipates. And so then we can start to tune into how we want to communicate, and communicate in a healthy and effective manner, right? Because what happens when you start to do this process is we don't need other people to validate us. We're not waiting and relying on them. Instead, we're doing it for ourselves. We're starting to say, you know what? I see you. I see your needs. I see that. We're going to figure this out together, right? We're going to figure out a way to honor that need that you have. And if somebody wants to help, fantastic. And if they don't, we'll find the right person that will, because I'm looking for people to be in alignment with me, right?
Yep.
With my expectations. I understand that I can have flexibility and forgiveness in many different areas, right? Because some things are, would love to have, but they're not my deepest, corest, most authentic needs. I have learned I need to feel seen and heard. And it's because of this process to get to this place, like you said, where you can actually start to recognize your story without crying over your story. I'm at a place in my therapeutic journey where now I'm finally digging into the years of my inner child that I didn't want to do. I mean, and I'm very grateful that my therapist didn't force, a lot of therapists want to start with the family core, your core family unit and everything. And I was like, that's not what's pressing. My marriage is what's pressing. And I understand that your inner stuff, affects how you are in your marriage. But at the same time, like, some of that compounds, right? And if I hadn't have gone through the marriage stuff first to then get to the stuff where I can handle and honor myself and choose to pay attention to my needs, I wouldn't be in a strong enough place to then really dig into that hurtful stuff. And now that I'm digging into that and seeing a lot of those developmental years, it makes sense to me why the need to be seen and heard is so important, so that I don't feel abandoned, so that I don't feel ignored, so that I feel important, so that I feel like somebody else thinks that I'm worthy of being paid attention to.
Yeah.
I don't need that from everybody. I'm not saying I'm a little attention whore by any means, right? But when it comes to like solid, whether it's close team members or, partnerships, and even with my own kid, it's recognizing what it is that you need, because then you can start to separate out the need for them to be the person to fulfill that. And instead rely on myself, and communicate like with a team member in my business. It might be, I need you to find us a way to automate this so that we don't keep skipping this step, because this is bringing in a lot of frustration. It's taking up both of our times. And this amount of time that we spend doing this every single process, it's too much. Like, it's time to eliminate it. I need you to find us a way to automate this. Can you do that for me? Right? I could take the time to do it. And I might choose to do that. If that's the right thing for you, do that. But it might be communicating it, right? But again, it's not about, I need her to just meet this need on her own, and I'm just expecting her to figure it out because I told you time and time and time again. That was the Jamie 3-4 years ago. Jamie was looking for everybody else to be as strategic and systematic. I didn't realize that that's not a natural skill for so many people, and that their stories and their journeys didn't necessarily lead them to being, needing to create structure for themselves. And so I think that that's, coming back to how do you, apply this to be choosing yourself? It's because I see the value in it time and time again. I see how beneficial it is, so now it's like, well, why wouldn't I? Like, I now feel way more in control of my emotions when I'm not in control.
Yeah. I think I've taken this sort of same approach when talking about and moving people from this employee mindset that we always seem to have, right? And it's really, really present in women entrepreneurs, where we're literally looking around and going, okay, now who's going to tell me how to do this? What answer? Oh, you want me to give the answer? I know, but I need you to tell me what you think about this, right? And so often we build our businesses with people surrounding us so that they can do the stuff and things and tell us what we should be doing, instead of us showing up in our business and saying, I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly what I need from you. And then the communication comes from asking for those things, from showing up and having these hard conversations. And I totally agree that the only way that you can do that is by having self-awareness and really doing the inner work. And I love that you are on your therapy journey of going that one layer deeper, because that's where the real work of uncovering the sore spots. And really, when you get to working in this, in the childhood, the actual childhood, little T and big T trauma that has happened, I think that transitions really well to showing up in our businesses and how we show up with our team members, how we show up with our contractors that we have put in place. And sometimes, I'll be fully honest, there are some times where I've had to release team members because I'm like, this is just, it's not aligning, because we are not on the same journey. We are not on the same path. But you have to be willing to communicate that. And I think not a lot of people show up like that. And that is my hope, and that is my goal for a lot of a lot of women, especially women in business that are starting on their entrepreneurial journey, or maybe they're, a few years in, that you have to look at yourself on the inside and go, what do I need?
Yeah, because you just said it a minute ago. You said the word should, right?
Yeah.
And anytime I hear the word should, I immediately hold up, like a flyer question mark. Is this shame? Because when we talked about this earlier before we started, just kind of, do we know who we are, once our kids are out of the house, and we're not full-time caregivers, who am I without my kid here every day, right? And I think that that's the thing, is that when you don't have environments that have taught you the models, right? And you don't know where you're going, it's really easy for you to judge your insides based on other people's outsides, especially in the culture that we're in today with social media and all of the quick fix, earn 6 figures in your first 3 months. And they're not actually talking about all of the underneath the tip of the iceberg, and it can get really tough if they're not being vulnerable too, right?
Yeah.
And their journey may have looked very differently. They may have gotten to this place much sooner than Jamie, in terms of working through that inner child. There may not have been as many layers to work through. But when we have that shame and that I should be as successful as them. I should be doing it their way. Oh, I should try that method of lead generation. I should hire this type of person. I should keep this person on because they're going to give me leverage in my business. But they don't realize how much energy they're drained from because they're not in alignment, right? And that should aspect of things is the part of us that is still looking for some exterior validation, right? Yeah. We need that external validation from other people to tell us that we're on the right path, because we're not in tune with ourselves to say, I know what I want, and I know that my path might not be the same as somebody else's to getting there. But you know what? My journey wasn't the same either. My experiences are very different than theirs. And when we can acknowledge that and we can say, but I'm really convicted to getting to that place that I want to be in, to building this the way that I want to do it, then we can start to tune out the aspects of social media. You're not afraid to unfollow. You're not afraid to not be on it regularly. And let me tell you, I understand some people build really big businesses on social media. Fantastic. But again, you can't judge your insides on their outsides because you don't know what their journey is. They may not have as much trauma as you. They may have very different traumas. They may have I don't think anybody has no trauma, but it's you can't, you don't know what their experiences and skill sets are and where their energy lies. Some people get really excited about it. They love being on social media. It's their thing. Of course, if you're going to be in it all the time and you love it and you connect with people really well in that manner, then turn it into a lead gen form if you're in online business.
Yes.
But if that's not what you want, you don't like vulnerability, then that's where that awareness helps you determine what strategy do I use so that it's in alignment with me. So then I can be sustainable in my business, and it will lead me to scalability if that's what I want to do. Not everybody has to build a big business. That's what I thought I wanted in real estate, in the beginning. But then I realized I hate managing people. I mean, I really do. And, knowing where I wanted to go, I knew what it would take. And it's I don't think that's really the pathway that I want to take to get there. So is there a different way? What is my real end goal? Is it, build a big team and make X amount of dollars? Or what are those dollars going to fund, right? What is the team going to give me? Is it freedom and flexibility, right? What is that? And can we be okay that there could be multiple ways to get there? Because I hear people all the time, you need to focus in on one thing. It's almost like multi-passionate, entrepreneur shaming. And it's you know what? I'm okay with the fact that I'm willing to try on multiple things and do my thing until I get there, because I'm in it for me.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody else helping me get there. I mean, yes, I have people that support me along the way that are a part of my business. But I'm saying at the end of the day, if I stopped everything, it's not coming to me, right? Nobody else is just going to hand it to me. I've got to put in the work. And so I want to be lit up by that work. I want my energy to be sustainable no matter what it is that I'm doing. And I want my energy to be sustainable, not only in my business, but by God, in myself, so that I can show up in my relationships better.
Yeah. I wanna hone in on this social media aspect. I will stand on this soapbox, and I always share with people that you can, right, look at social media, and this is part of when you get to the self-awareness aspect and you know the things that you need, you know the gaps, right, that you are missing, the things that you don't know. Those things that you don't know are the things that, yes, you can go out to social media and find those resources, find the things. What often happens is we get so sucked into what other people are doing. And you said it best, we match our insides with the outsides. We get so sucked into what they're doing that now all of a sudden our business is on a whole different track. And we are standing around looking at other people to help us get it either back on track, or now we're just off the rails, and now our business is totally something than what we even wanted in the first place. But I think it's important to note that you can go out to social media and you can get the little tidbits, but don't park there. Yeah, don't park there. You know, I always have to remind myself, and I'm sure you do too, that like and this is to my core, something that drives me crazy. I'm going to show you how to make $10,000 in 5 days. No, you're not. No, you're actually not, because you're not showing what was from $0 to 10,000. You're showing what's 10,000 and what's operating right now and the things that they have to do. But what they don't realize is all of the self-development that they had to do to get to the place of telling somebody how they can help them get $10,000. And I'm sorry, unless you're a therapist, helping somebody unpack that shit that they came with, that's not the way, right?
Or even talking about their past job experiences that help teach them the soft skills that led them to being able to apply that into their entrepreneurship, right? Like,
yes,
you know, and that, because I actually have a class called Empowered Entrepreneurship, and I talk about that. I'm like, let me be clear. I came from a decade, almost a decade of sales already, right?
Yes.
So like, here we are. Now it's like, I know the things that I needed to do, right? Here's my backstory as to how I learned to plan and to put everything on my calendar, you know,
Yes.
to be structured in some of these things. So if you don't have those skills, right, you're going to need those skills to be able to apply these other things.
Exactly.
Right.
So and that's the piece that's often missing. Yeah. Yeah.
But it takes that awareness of people looking at it. We all want the quick fix button. We all
do.
I mean, heck, if you know where to find it, let us know. Right. Because I mean, like, but people think that they have it, and people think that if I just spend the money and buy that class, then I will get it too. And you have to really be paying attention to say, like, is this actually addressing the one thing I need help with the most right now? And ultimately, if you can't answer that question, then you're not really in tune with yourself yet.
Yep.
And that's what I would say. And you know, I try to pack in, like you said, you know, a therapist, and I've had people say to me, like, going through the journal prompt, she was like, this felt like a super in-depth therapy session. And I was like, well, I hope so. Because I mean, I've got like more than $70,000, $80,000 worth of of therapy, you know, over the last 4 years that I'm pouring into this workbook, you know, because it is such important work, and not everybody has access to healthcare or mental health care. Not everybody has access to safe environmental conversations about the importance of mental health care, right? Like the things that I learned, if I had knew how to not only have those conversations, but apply them regularly years ago, I just think to myself, like, well, where would I be? It would be incredible. So if I can put some of that into my son now, you know, like, yeah, I want to give him the leg up, right? In terms of being self-aware. And I think that that's really important with social media, is paying attention to, am I looking at this judging myself, or am I truly looking at it for inspiration and not letting myself get distracted from what my pathway is? And I said earlier, like, your pathway can change if you're very clear on what the vision is that you want for yourself in the long run, and why that's important, how that's going to be impactful, how you want to impact, you know, when you're hitting, what does success look like for you, not somebody else's version of success, right? And I think that that's the part that you have to have really started to practice and master so that you can separate out, good, I would say, healthy and unhealthy social media responses.
Yeah. Outside of that, I want to give some people some tangible things that, when they come to you, Jamie, when somebody shows up in your space and they say, I know that I need self-awareness, but I don't know what that looks like for me. I don't know how to get there, and I don't know where I should even start.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them, and how would you kind of start them on that journey?
Yeah. So first and foremost, you can go to my website, jamiemilam.com/self-awareness guide. Free 27-page guide with more than 40 journaling prompts. Okay. Some people will journal. Some people will have meditation. For me, I think that that's the best way to introspect. I personally like to have a writing utensil because I think things flow out without you giving thought process to it, which is great, right? That's where that's where your actual authentic core self is coming true, right? It on paper, you're not overthinking it. But a lot of people may not know, like you said, where to start. What questions am I asking for myself? So this is what I would say is that there's going to be some really great journal prompts in there for you to dig into. What do I want? What do I envision for myself? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? Where does my energy light up? And they go a lot more in depth than that, trust me. But secondly, the other aspect of this, and it's in the book, in the workbook, Marie Forleo has a book called Everything is Figure-Outable. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, she has an exercise that she talks about. And I'll tell you right now, life-changing. Okay. She talks about how do you tell the difference between fear and intuition? And I know that she describes it differently, but this is the way that I put it into practice is you have to get really quiet with yourself, right? You're sitting. I like to think of, with my feet on the floor and my hands are typically palm up on my legs. And we encourage you to take 3 deep breaths. I mean, really deep in breaths and out breaths so that you can feel your shoulders fall. Be present in your body. Slow down. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel your shoulders rise. Feel them fall. Feel the back of your hands on your legs, right? Feel your butt in the seat. Be really present in your body. And when you are facing some sort of challenge or, crossroads or a decision that you're just not sure, if you just quiet in yourself and be in tune with your body and ask yourself, does saying yes to this make me feel excited and expansive? Or does it make me feel tight and contracted? And in that moment, your body will react. It will react. You may not notice it at first, but if you keep practicing this, you will notice it so strongly, okay? This isn't about what thoughts keep coming up after you've asked that initial question. It's not about letting your mind run. It's not about logic. My hands will tend to tighten, right? My arms and my shoulders might come back in towards my body a little bit. But if it's a yes, like my fingers will almost like expand out a little bit further. I will feel, for the listeners, they can't see that Kaylee can see me, but I will feel my body kind of start to sway a little bit in like a little bit of a letting loose groove, right? When I feel good about something.
Yeah.
And so that's your body telling you, yes, this feels good. This feels right. This feels in alignment. Okay. It's not allowing the fearful thoughts to come into play to talk you out of it. And it might not make sense. Okay. But it is your body telling you. And I've gone against my body's decision here just to see it play out. And it had been right in the first place. Okay. But that's the thing is that when you practice this and when you go through these different steps in this workbook, the beauty is that the more that you practice it, the easier it becomes. In the beginning, just like anything, you're not going to go and run a marathon tomorrow if you're not a runner. You're going to have to massage yourself there. But what happens is in the beginning, you're taking time to go through these prompts and you're learning how to visualize what you want, how to pay attention to your body and acknowledge it, how to validate it, and then really question what would make me feel good right now? What do I need Sometimes that's, I need to learn this skill, or I need to communicate something. Sometimes it's, I need to step away and go take a walk so that I can get a new, fresh perspective, or I need to come back to this conversation at a later time, right? And then when we recognize what it is, then we can put a strategy into place and take action towards that. And once you start that action, you're starting the process all over again. We're paying attention. We're reflecting what parts of this work, what doesn't. Because as newer entrepreneurs, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Right. So sometimes you do have to try on different things. You may not know if you love Instagram and Facebook, or maybe you love Pinterest or LinkedIn or a blog or just phone calls, right? Real estate. Some love open houses, some love door knocking, some love, expired and FSBO listings, and some just want to throw events, right? You don't know what you don't know until you know it, but you have to try something and be willing to reflect on it and pay attention to what your body is telling you, what your energy is telling you about it. Like if you're always like, I have to go in and do this thing today. Hello? That's not in alignment. So the things that I would say is download this free workbook, because again, there's so many journal prompts in there. And in fact, I'm teaching a class this afternoon and in a girls' Facebook group, because they asked me to come back and take this 5-step process and apply it towards communication. So we're going to go through, a live workshop about how to apply that to communication. And their group host, she said, I went through these prompts and I lost my marbles. Those are her words. I lost my marbles at how insightful it was, and effective. So it's really diving deeper into those things. And if you don't know where to start, I would say that exercise and journaling, because journaling will give you clues. Sometimes, y'all,
I giggle because I am like, every episode, my audience hears journaling.
Well, and
I'm like, this is not normal.
And here's the thing is, like, this process used to take me intentional time, right?
Yes.
But now I've gotten to a place where I can do this like in a dime, right? Like in a moment, I can recognize it and I can make a decision in that moment in terms of how I need to communicate, if I can say yes or no to something. Depends on the weight of it, of course, right? I might say, you know what, I need a couple of days to come back into this and I'll bring you a decision then.
But again, it's the waning and the waxing of it. Yeah.
And two, sometimes it's that I'm having a conversation with somebody and I can feel it in my body. When I started this somatic work, my feeling was down in my gut. Okay. It is now almost to like where your chin, like the tip of your chin is, but underneath my throat. Okay. It's very fascinating to me because it feels like metaphorically, like it's actually, this stuff is actually coming up and almost completely out of my body at this point. So if I'm in a conversation and something like hits something deeper in me, I typically can feel it underneath my chin, right? Underneath my throat. And sometimes I will pull out my phone, not like obnoxious, like I'm not paying attention to you, but I'll pull out my phone and I'll quickly throw in to my next therapy appointment, like my notes in my calendar. And I will just make a couple quick notes about what just was said and the feeling that I had, just so I'll know I need to come back to that. I'm not going to separate myself from this conversation with this person who, I know that it's not about them. It's about something that they said that just triggered something in me. And I want to take time to explore that. But this isn't the moment. But I'm not going to ignore it anymore. Because ignoring things, y'all, it's just keeping it suppressed in your body. Your body's storing all of that energy. It's not good for you. It's not good. You're not going to grow out of that. It's going to stay there. Okay. You can't run from it. It's in your body.
Yeah.
It's going with you every single day, every single breath, every single step, no matter if you're in the US or if you go overseas, you can't run from it. Okay.
And
so
it usually shows up with poor sleep, poor eating, not taking care of yourself,
and just
showing up for other people and not yourself.
Yep.
Those are all the things that it comes. Yeah.
And so the more that you practice this, like I said, it will become easier. You can do it instantaneously. You will become so aware of it. And when you're aware of it, you won't want to ignore it, because when you say to yourself, I'm just going to ignore this, like you suddenly start to feel, well, that means I'm ignoring me. That means that I'm saying I'm not worthy of uncovering this, of just addressing it so that I can learn from it and move forward from it. And you know what? By God, I am worthy. I value myself because I deserve to have the life that I want to have. Nobody else is going to bring it to me. And so feeling like I want to address that thing. And sometimes that thing will sit on the table and it gets a little too painful in therapy. And I say, can we come back to it? Like it's draining me so much at this moment. Let's come back to it. We're not going to forget about it. And even if you think you are, it's going to show up naturally anyways. Right. So again,
but you can chip away. That's the important part.
Yeah. We're not looking to fix everything overnight.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be fixed overnight.
And you guys, here's the thing is that you mastering this doesn't mean that you've hit this destination and you don't have any more work to do. Okay. I could master my communication and how to let go of when my ex would say something to me post-divorce that it was just like, why are you shaming me? Right. But here's the thing is that there's going to be something new that I have to learn to process in the moment when my son goes to college and I can't check in to make sure that he's doing his homework and that he's, holding our money accountable, there's going to be something new because your seasons change. So you want to master some of these skills so that you have them for the majority of any situation, right? And so you'll need to apply it to lots of different situations. It would be fascinating if I took a log these days, like for, even a week, just to see how many times through a day do I, boom, awareness, right? Like I've tried to do pod episodes for it when I notice them. I have a running list, but it's fascinating.
And speaking of your podcast, it's called Determined AF. I freaking love it. And I would encourage anyone to seriously just go listen to one episode. You are such a light. Thank you for sharing your heart today. Any final words for our listeners today?
Haley, the thing that I would like to say is no matter what your journey has been, no matter where you see yourself going, and no matter the situation that you're in right now, right? You have a choice. You have the control. And they're not always easy in the moment. I'm not saying that, right? But what I am saying is no matter the situation that you've been in, that you are in, or where you're going, what you desire and what you need and the life that you envision for yourself, it's worthy. It's deserving. We all deserved to be loved as a little child. We all deserve to be loved as an adult. And that starts with you. You teach people how to treat you. So honor yourself in a way that it is so loud and proud, not shitty, not condescending, not cocky, but proud and confident in knowing your value, because that is magnetic. There's so much power in that. You will feel so much more peace. And I think that that's the one thing that I want everybody, right? Especially women, learn to value yourself because you are worthy.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you heard something that helped you, I would love it if you would leave a review and share it with your friends. This helps more people just like you become inspired to move the needle of their big CEO energy into a positive direction. If you would like to learn more about how I can help you streamline and position your business for growth or lead your business as a CEO, feel free to jump into the show notes with all of the links to find me. And don't forget to head over to Instagram so we can be pals.